Very good day, children. Today we are going to see the second lesson, human reproductive system, the continuation of the topic fertilization and implantation. So in fertilization we are going to see what is fertilization. The topic is what is fertilization. So here the fertilization occurs when a haploid sperm, that means n number of chromosome, and a haploid ovum with n number of chromosome, when they fuse together, they fertilize the egg or the diploid zygote is formed. So that is what is explained in the picture. There you can see the number of chromosomes added from each side, from the maternal as well as the paternal. So where does the fertilization occurs? So the fertilization, actually this occurs in the ampullary ischemic region of the fallopian tube, what you call it as the oviduct. So here this is a region where the fertilization takes place. Okay, next one. So before that, what has to be done for the sperm? So the sperm has to be capacitated. That means it has to be made functional on the basis of biochemical event. So that only enables the sperm to penetrate the fertilized egg. For that, you can see the picture here, the layer, outermost layer, the corona radiata, and then you have zona pellucida. All these are the layers of the egg. The egg has to be covered with the thick layers. The sperm has to enter inside with some biochemical events. So this functional aspect we call it as capacitation. Okay. So what are the mechanisms of fertilization? So the first one is capacitation of the sperm. First acrosomal reaction, second acrosomal reaction, cortical granules and zona pellucida reaction. Nucleus of the sperm enters the cytoplasm of the ovum. Second, the oocyte completes second meiotic division, union between the male and female pronuclei to form the zygote. After that, you can see the picture here, which is given here, from the first process to the fifth process, one by one, step by step it's given. See, the sperm first touches the zona pellucida of the egg, that is the outermost layer. So there, the reaction takes place. That means the granules, that is acrosome, has got some proteolytic enzymes, what you call it as hyaluronidase. It tries to split up the membrane of the zona pellucida, and then it enters inside. That is the third process. There you can see the proteolytic enzymes are all disintegrating the membrane of the zona pellucida, and then it enters inside the head and the body region of the sperm enters. The tail is cut off. After that, the entire portion is entering inside. Immediately after that, the cortical granules which are present within the cytoplasm of the egg, now that forms a fertilization membrane. So that forms the barrier, and so they block. The function is to block the polyspermy. That means furthermore entry of the sperm is not allowed. Now, so before that, we could see that the egg, what's happening to the egg? See, the egg, it is having the cumulus cells surrounded by that with the corona radiata as the layer and zona pellucida. Inside you can see the womb and then the polar body. Everything is a constituent of here. See, this is having a tight junction. It's having a tight junction, or due to that, that is the adhesive cementing substance, what do you call it as hyaluronic acid, which is responsible for the tight junction of the follicle cells here. So this is the reason why the sperm is unable to enter very easily inside. Now the acrosomal reaction, as we said earlier, so it has to disintegrate the egg membrane by introducing the proteolytic enzyme, what do you call it as hyaluronidase. And so the sperm entry is facilitated into the corona radiata and then into zona pellucida. That is, after that, the formation of the fertilization membrane takes place. So once fertilization is accomplished, see the diagram here, so many sperms are waiting outside. Immediately what will happen? The cortical granules which are present in the cytoplasm of the egg will form a barrier, what do you call it as the fertilization membrane, immediately around the ovum, so that no more sperms are allowed to enter inside the egg. So polyspermy, what do you call it as the process, polyspermy is prevented. Then after that, the fusion of the sperm with the egg. So now you have to see that before that the sperm has got a nucleus. So that nucleus you call it as a male nucleus, but when it enters into the cytoplasm, you call it as male pronucleus. Now you call it as male pronucleus. So as a result of the sperm fusing with the egg plasma lemma, that means the plasma membrane. Lemma means membrane. So when it enter inside the oocyte nucleus, it tries to fuse with that. Now the oocyte nucleus is at the stage of metaphase, that means the second meiotic division. So after that, it is completed only by the fertilization process, that is the fusion with the male pronucleus to the oocyte, and then the completion is done. And another one, the polar body which is present inside helps nourishment of the developing fetus or in future. Okay. Now the next one, haploid male and the pronuclei of the female, they move together, they fuse, and everything happens in the oviduct, what you call it as the fallopian tube, in the isthmic region. Now the diploid zygote is formed, that is N plus N, you call it as 2N. Now the diploid zygote is said to be 2N, and now the zygote will proceed to undergo the next stage, what you call it as cleavage. So all these are happening in the fallopian tube, that is the oviduct. Now, how is it possible? The activation of the ovum. Ovum has to be activated. So far it was inert. So now it has to do something. For that, a series of morphological, physiological and molecular changes has to be undergone by the egg in response to the sperm nucleus which has entered inside. Now, what are the events? We can see that to activate the egg. For that, first, the release of calcium ions. Where you are getting the release of calcium ions? From the endoplasmic reticulum of the egg, plus the cortical granules of the egg cytoplasm. All these together, the contents are formed which are all released into the perivitelline space. What do you mean by the perivitelline space? It is the space between the vitelline membrane and the inner membrane. What do you call it as? These two. Now we call it as perivitelline membrane, making the vitelline membrane hardened, or the zona pellucida hardened, so that furthermore sperms are not allowed to enter inside to prevent the polyembryonic condition. Otherwise you will be getting twins, triplets, quadruples like that. To avoid that, this process is going on. Okay, fine. Now there is influx and efflux of certain ions. We can see here that is increase in metabolism. There is increase in metabolism due to the influx and efflux of certain ions, what you call it as the sodium ions and the hydrogen ions in the cytoplasmic pH, which is increasing. So what happens to that? What is the result of this? Is that this gears up the zygote development, gears up the zygote development, speeding up the reaction. Okay, after that what happens? What is the next process? Cleavage. Next, the embryonic development starts. So far the fertilization process, the zygote development is over. Now the embryonic development. Now what happens? As early as 12 hours of fertilization, 12 hours of fertilization, the two bundles, that is the pronucleus, genetic material of male and female, they from each parent. Now they will be remaining inside. They will take nearly 18 to 20 hours of time to fuse. So now you get the diploid zygote. After that, this has to undergo three main processes. What do you call it as? Cleavage, growth and differentiation. These are the furthermore steps which has to be done. Now after fertilization of this, the diploid zygote now undergoes cleavage division. What is cleavage division? This is also happening only in the oviduct. Now it doesn't enter into the uterus. So far it is going on only in the oviduct. So the first series of cell division, first time it divides into two by mitosis after fertilization. Now the process is mitosis, not meiosis. Okay. So the rapid cell division, the cell growth does not occur. Here there is no growth. Remind me, children, the growth doesn't occur. Only cell decrease in size upon division. See the first cell, now it divides into two, after that 4, like that it keeps on dividing. Next one, the cleavage. So first time it provides, it makes two cells, that is identical cells. Those two identical cells, you call it as blastomeres. These two cells are called as blastomeres. These produces, after that in further course, it produces 4 cells, 8 cells and so on. So after 72 hours of fertilization, nearly 3 days, after 72 hours of fertilization, a loose connection of cells are formed here. See, a loose connection of cells formed, that is forming a berry-shaped cluster. So now nearly it is in the 16th cell stage. What do you call it as? Morula. Now you call this as morula. Okay. Next, after that, then it has to undergo, okay, now cleavage is over. now it has to go for implantation. That means settlement of this egg into the uterus. So under the influence of progesterone, this hormone which is produced by the corpus luteum, progesterone, now what happens is that this relaxes the muscles of the fallopian tube or the oviduct, because it has to move step by step for the further development. Now it relaxes the fallopian tube. After that, after 4 or 5 days, now slowly it moves to the uterine cavity. There it gets implanted for development into the uterine wall. At this point, the embryo consists of a fluid filled hollow ball of cells. Now that cell you call it as fluid filled hollow ball of cells. What do you have? Call it as blastocyst. Now you call it as blastocyst. About 100 cells will be present inside. Next one. See here, the blastocyst is having a fluid filled structure. Surrounding this is the trophoplast layer. Inside you can have the fluid filled structure present inside. The outermost layer, flattened cells, you call it as trophoplast cells. Okay, now you have an inner cell mass inside. So all these develop into, now the blastocyst develops into the embryo. This is the one which develops into the embryo in future. Now this is embedded in the endometrium of the uterus. Now the endometrium is the bed-like structure preparing itself to receive the embryo. So here it is implanted. So this process we call it as implantation. Okay. Now sometimes what happens, so instead of preparing the baby to develop into the uterus, now sometimes the development occurs in the fallopian tube itself, that is in the oviduct itself. What do you call it as? Ectopic pregnancy. Ectopic pregnancy. Sometimes the fertilized ovum is implanted outside the uterus, not inside the uterus, outside the uterus. Now you call it as ectopic pregnancy. What will happen? 95% we can observe this sort of cases, that is the pregnancies. So here what will happen? If the growth is accompanied in the fallopian tube, there is internal bleeding, disintegration of the blood capillaries resulting in the internal bleeding and infection. Even due to this, the death of the fetus, as well as it is very dangerous for the mother also. So that is called as ectopic pregnancy. After this, how to maintain the pregnancy and embryonic development. How to maintain the pregnancy. That means now cleavage is over. It has been implanted into the uterine wall. Now the next process you call it as gastrulation. That means converting the single layered blastula into 2 to 3 layered gastrula, forming the germ layers, that is the hypoblast, epiblast and mesoderm. That means the epiblast is said to be the ectoderm, hypoblast endoderm, the middle layer is the mesoderm. So these 3 germ layers form the future organs. That means the organogenesis is initiated. So conversion of single layered blastula into 2 to 3 layers gastrula. That is gastrulation. You can see this in this process, the blastocele, blastula, early gastrula, formation of the 3 germ layers. Next one, the extra embryonic membranes. So the fetus has to be covered by as many membranes, that is the 3 main germ layers, what do you call it as? The extra embryonic membranes supporting the fetus. So here these membranes are amnion, yolk sac, allantois and chorion. So these 3, amnion, allantois, chorion. So here what happens? These things, they protect the embryo from desiccation and mechanical shock. Whatever happens for the mother doesn't matter, the baby will be protected. Even in the coma stage, if the mother is in the coma stage, the baby is protected by these extra embryonic membranes, because the first one is the amnion. So this double layered translucent membrane, so filled with the amniotic fluid, is bathing the baby, providing a medium for that and gives a buoyant environment. So all these are aiding the baby to get protected, and also it helps in absorption of nutrients and exchange of gases. The next one is the yolk sac. What is yolk sac? When I say yolk sac, that time itself you can understand it is a part of the gut. So it is a part of the gut and also forms the earliest blood cells and the blood vessels. Apart from that, allantois is a small outpacketing of the embryonic tissue. So here you can see that. So this is the caudal end of the yolk sac, and it is a structural base. That is, in future it forms the umbilical cord that links the placenta and the future forming the future urinary bladder. Actually, this umbilical cord is the connection between the fetus and the placenta. Okay, so that is provided by the allantois in future. So next one is the outermost membrane covering all this. So this is the amnion, allantois, all these are covered by the chorea. Chorionic membrane, outermost, and here this helps in the formation of placenta, the bundle, the placental bundle is formed by this particular chorionic membrane totally. So what is placenta? Placenta is nothing but the temporary endocrine gland. This is formed only during the pregnancy, connecting the fetus to the uterine wall, uterine wall through the umbilical cord. See, you should learn the difference between the placenta and the umbilical cord. Okay, now the trophoblast cells, earlier you have seen the trophoblast cells of the blastocysts. Now they are giving finger-like projections. See here these finger-like projections, what do you call it as chorionic villi. So this carries the fetal blood surrounded by the sinus from the mother, that is from the maternal blood. Okay, so they are responsible for that, and this is formed at about 6th to 12th week of pregnancy. Fully developed placental disc shaped with a diameter of 15 to 20 centimeter and thickness of 2 to 5 centimeter, weighs about 500 grams. You think of that, baby weight will be, the fetus will be 2 to 2.5 grams, okay, kilograms, and the weight of 500 grams of placenta is added to that. Okay, next one, what is the function? What is the function of placenta? Mainly it is nutritive, respiratory and excretory in nature. Another one, the embryo's heart develops. Embryo's heart develops at about the 4th week of pregnancy. That is one. Another one, circulating the blood. It is circulating the blood through the umbilical cord and placenta. For whom? For the fetus from the mother. Okay. And another one, it is an important source of blood stem cells. Have you heard of stem cells? These stem cells, they are having a full potential for the treatment of blood disorders, so which is achieved only by the umbilical cord blood. Okay, so this is also an important feature you must learn. Next one, the primary germ layers. Primary germ layers. Now the next one is primary germ layers. So from the gastrula, see, as I already told you, the single layered blastula is converted into 2 to 3 layered gastrula, what do you call it as ectoderm, endoderm, and in between you can see the mesoderm. So these 3 germ layers are responsible for the primitive tissues, for the formation of the primitive tissues, and these tissues are forming the organs to develop. So organs, after that organogenesis, then a complete organism is developed only from these primary germ layers. So out of that, the first one is the ectoderm, that is, this gives rise to the central nervous system. When I say central nervous system, it's very clear for you to find out it is the brain and the spinal cord. Then the peripheral nervous system, epidermis, derivatives of the mammary gland. So all these are developed from the ectoderm. Then comes the mesoderm, the middle layer. So here the connective tissues, cartilage, bone, muscles, organs of urinary system, kidney, ureter, gonads, everything is formed by this particular mesoderm. Then you have the endoderm, innermost layer. So this gives rise to the epithelium of the gastrointestinal, that means from the mouth to the anus. So that is formed by this endoderm, as well as the respiratory tract, that is the lungs, everything is formed by this. Also the liver, pancreas, thyroid, parathyroid. So all these structures are formed by the endoderm as an outpocketing of this gastrointestinal duct. Okay. So this is the primary germ layers. Okay, you can see the picture here. So just for supporting this, I have given here endoderm, ectoderm, all this. So what are the structures which are formed here? Next one, gestational period. Now the baby is developing inside. How many days it has to grow? What is the time given for that? Is 270 days plus or minus 10 days. That means at the most 280 days. That doesn't complete 270 days. It is divided into 3 trimesters. That means the first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, first 3 months. So here it is the period of organogenesis. Organs are development of the body organs like the heart, limbs, lungs, liver, internal genital organs. Once it is formed in the first trimester itself. Now the second trimester, here the face is well formed. You can identify the baby. It is having a well formed features like the eyelids, eyelids, the eye blinks, you can find that, and the body is covered with the fine hairs, you can see with the fetus. In the scan they will find all this, and the muscle tissue develops the bone and this becomes harder. Now the bone is formed, this is a harder structure. Now the third one is the trimester, the last from 6 to 9 months. Fully developed, the fetus is fully developed and ready for parturition. What do you call it as parturition? The childbirth. Okay, so it is ready for the childbirth. Next one, you can see the picture here. I have added this for information. So here it is ready for the parturition. Next one. So what are the hormones associated with the placenta? So the placenta is producing some temporary hormones. So that means the endocrine gland, that is the HCG, HCS and HPL. That means human chorionic gonadotropin, human chorionic somatotropin, human placental lactogen. So these three are the hormones produced by the placenta. Apart from that, there is another one, relaxing hormone. So this relaxing hormone, this is produced during the later pregnancy, phase of pregnancy, mainly to relax the pelvic muscles. Relax the pelvic muscles at the time of parturition, aiding the outcome of the baby. So it has to come out, isn't it? For that, it is relaxing the ligaments, pelvic ligaments associating with the HCG and HPL. And then the hormones supporting the fetal growth. So some hormones have to be associated as long as the fetus have been going. That is the estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, prolactin and thyrosin. All these are supporting the fetal growth. Now the increase, that at this time you can see the mother having several folds increase of these hormones, several folds in the maternal bed during the pregnancy. So the mother will be in a complete stress due to the high level of hormones present here. Next one, parturition and lactation. Parturition, the child, it has completed its growth and it has to come out, giving birth to the baby. You call it as parturition. So this time they will be having two types of problems. That is, one is the false labor. You call it as a false labor. What do you call it as? Braxton-Hicks contraction. Now the endometrium, the uterus of the endometrium has to undergo a cyclic changes due to this time. So now what will happen? Throughout the pregnancy, this will be undergoing the false labor. That is, so many episodes, the contraction, the relaxation of the fetus. They have some feelings, isn't it? So that results in the contraction. So very often they will be getting a weak or a strong contraction. What do you call it as? False labor, Braxton-Hicks contraction. Another one, the final one, Ferguson reflex or the fetal ejection reflex. That time it has to, no more time, the time is completed, it has to be rejected out. So here this increase in the estrogen concentration promotes the uterine contraction. So that time the estrogen will be increasing and the child will be expelled out. So facilitating the molding and downward movement. The head of the baby has to be tilted down. So the downward movement of the fetus dilates the cervix of the uterus, so that aiding the baby to come out. So this initiation is done by another hormone. What do you call it as? Oxytocin. So this is stimulated the secretion from the neurohypophysis. Okay, another one, the powerful contraction of the uterus alone will be sending out the baby. Expulsion of the baby will be done through the birth canal. Okay, so all these are the hormones you can see in this picture. Next one. So before that, you can see the amniotic fluid. See the pictures. 3 stages of parturition are there. So the rupture of the amniotic fluid, the baby is surrounded by the amniotic fluid in the amnion. The rupture of the amniotic fluid, it is aiding the baby to come out, it making a way for them to come out through the cervical canal. See this, it is coming out like this. Along with that, the birth, after the birth, expulsion of the umbilical cord and the placenta. These two also will be expelled out after parturition. Then finally, baby is ready. It's born. Now the mother must be ready for lactation, that is production of milk by mammary glands. Immediately after the birth of the baby, lactation is induced. So that is called as lactogenesis. Genesis means production. So here this stimulates the anterior pituitary gland, the hypothalamus here, to make increased level of estrogen, progesterone and HPL towards the production of prolactin. That means prolactin releasing factors for lactation. Prolactin releasing factors for lactation. And then this oxytocin causes let-down reflex. So all these have to be pointed out when you write it as a notes, isn't it? This let-down reflex of the oxytocin results in the ejection of milk. From where? From the alveoli of the mammary gland. So this one particular point gives 1 mark for you. This is a must one. You have to write this particular point when you go for examination if this question is asked. Okay. So helps in the contraction of the uterine muscles and regaining the normalcy. So after the expulsion of the baby, the uterus has to come back to the normal size. So that is done by the oxytocin. Now see the picture I have given here, a supportive picture. You can verify this. Colostrum. Now the baby has to be fed with the first milk. The first milk you call it as colostrum. So actually it is not a milk in white color. This is an yellowish fluid secreted by the mammary gland soon after the birth. But what is the composition here is that this is less in lactose and no fat, but more protein and vitamin A and minerals are present. That is why the doctors advise that you must give the colostrum soon after the birth of the baby, isn't it? So it is a must. So it is stressed by the doctors, because this is having a rich in IgA, that means immunoglobulin A antibodies, mainly because this is acting as an antimicrobial agent, protecting the infants from the digestive tract against the bacterial infection. So breast milk is advisable because it is easily digestible and an ideal food for the infants. So the importance I have given here as a slide, you can verify it. And so now we are completing the lesson with the fertilization, implantation, embryonic development, finally the development of the complete fetus, the childbirth, parturition and lactation to have a healthy life. And so I think the children, you would have understood this particular topic very clearly. Thank you so much.